Coming to Grand Rapids, Michigan on September 21st and 22nd is GrandCon Gaming and Comics Convention, presented by Celebration Cinemas. Join us in playing or chatting it up with fellow enthusiasts in a community that understands your passions. Get lost in the adventure of your favorite role-playing game. Admire costumes and art from vendors and attendees. Meet the creators behind your favorite mainstream and independent games and comic books. Check out unpublished games and sneak peek at things to come. You can get all this and more at GrandCon. For more information, please visit www.grand-con.com. Hello and welcome to the debut episode of Altered Geek Unplugged. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and joining me in this adventure into random geekiness is
Michael Powers, host of Off the Cuff for Geekcast Radio.
So, yeah, what's up?
Not much. I've been looking forward to doing a podcast like this for a while now. Because I like sitting down and just having random discussions about geek topics. As you know from standing in many a movie line with me.
Oh yeah,
a lot of those conversations could be small snippets of a podcast in their own right. So I enjoy talking to you. I assume you enjoy talking to me.
Oh, yes.
I thought we could, put our heads together and maybe just come up with something, as we've been saying in the direct messages, a little off the cuff, kind of like your Altered Geek YouTube videos are, just kind of random thoughts that we have about, or, opinions that we have about things throughout the week. And kind of share them that way. It doesn't have to be encapsulated, and shows don't have to be scheduled around to just cover something that might only take 10 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I don't know, I was kind of thinking, given that this is kind of a free-form thing, I was thinking maybe we could just share, for maybe people that tune into this podcast, it's kind of like a fresh start, zero baggage kind of thing. Maybe just explain a little bit about ourselves, so
yeah,
they know who they're talking to, instead of like, Geekcast Radio and all the podcasts that you guys do. Unless you start listening from the beginning, you might not really know who you're talking to.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. I guess I'll go first. I refer to myself as Steve Megatron online. I am the co-creator of the Geekcast Radio Network. Also co-creator of various shows on the network. I pride myself in knowing that I am not on every show unless I absolutely know the content and want to do it.
Unless you have something to say.
Yes, unless I have something to contribute. If it's something I don't really care, I don't do it, because I feel that I'm not only wasting my time but other people's time by having an ill-informed mention of whatever, opinion of whatever it happens to be. So rather than comment, I just leave it out. Also, I was doing an Altered Geek video podcast for a little while there, and then I just kind of fell off the bandwagon just because life hit me. I'm hoping to eventually get back to those, but in the meantime, it'll be nice to do something kind of unstructured and kind of like you said before, like off the cuff, but not really
not really any particular topic, any episode, it'll be nice to have something that's more fly by the seat of my pants of this is what I'm interested in right now, and rather than next week we're doing this, next week we're doing this, next week we're doing this, or reviewing this and reviewing this and reviewing this. Which, don't get me wrong, I like doing all of it, but it'll be nice to do something different.
Oh, totally. I mean, I don't think this is the forum for anything in depth. I mean, we can point them in the direction of another episode of a podcast if we touch on something, that you guys have covered or are going to cover. We can point them in that direction. I mean, this is just strictly, I mean, think of it like a commentary track to podcasting for topics.
Definitely.
So I mean, if like we can point you in the direction of, if we start talking about Transformers, we can point you in the direction of the Transformers podcast that you guys have on the site, or if we want to get in depth into gaming, we can send them over to Off the Cuff. I mean, maybe we're talking about video games over there. I don't know what we're talking about half the time, but we have fun doing it. So,
and that's really all that matters.
So, but what do you like to do in your free time when you're not working and being a family man?
I like to, granted, I casually game, meaning that I don't really collect that many video games. But the games I do have, I tend to play the crap out of.
Right.
Also of note is I sit and tinker with the Geekcast Radio website almost on a consistent basis, whether it's imagery or the design. Pretty much you can figure I'll be sitting there pretty much at some point every day messing with an aspect of the site itself. It's something I've been doing websites since 99, fan sites mostly, but Geekcast Radio was actually the first original kind of concept that I came up with. Not really based on one set thing. And it kind of blew out of proportion into what it is now. And but that's one of the things I constantly do. I like to play around with graphics. I like to do fan audio projects where I do the vocals on various projects online, and mostly stuff like that. I don't get too much time to do a lot of that anymore because I have a family and then I work and go to school, and so it keeps me busy. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I do.
All right. Well, as I said in the introduction, I co-host Off the Cuff for Geekcast Radio, which is a video game podcast, despite what the name says. We tend to talk about retro things, but more often than not, because I'm the host, it kind of veers towards current gen stuff. Because I like talking about the new stuff. I always like the new hotness. I always have to have new toys to play with.
Understandable.
Much to my wife's dismay. Although I have learned, only been married for 3 months, but with her for 5 years, I've learned how to actually, she helps me justify purchases, because if I can't justify something well enough to her so that she's not rolling her eyes at me, I just have to go back and think about, again, harder about why I want a particular thing. And then when I can present a proposal to her for said technological gadget without her rolling her eyes, then I know that I can, rightfully go out and buy something.
Nice.
So I like all things tech. I love computers. Although, funny thing, even though I love computers, I've never actually built one. The most I've ever done to any particular computer is add a dedicated graphics card and upgrade system RAM. That's about it. I mean, I know how. I know, certain parts only fit in certain places and things have to line up and all the numbers have to match and stuff like that. But I've never actually built one from scratch, which I'm hoping to do within the next year or so. I am also my day job slash night job, I guess, is also I'm a projectionist at a local movie theater. So yes, I do get to see a lot of movies. I am the guy that, well, in the past I was the guy that started all your movies. Now it's all done automatically. It's very boring. But you know what? It pays, so I still do it. I do like a lot of movies. You'd think possibly working at a movie theater it can be a little tiresome, but I'm in it. I've worked in the theater business. Next year will be 10 years, next fall. And I remember the first time I went in for orientation, they asked me, they were like, do you have any questions for us? And I said, when can I start using my free movies? And can I get the Batman Begins poster in the lobby? Those are my two questions.
Nice.
Not when was my first shift or how much am I getting paid or anything like that. It was, I often say, time and time again that I would, if I could, I would work there solely for payments in movie posters, because I collect those too. But I do read comics, so we can talk about that on here. We can talk about movies. Another passion of mine over the last decade has been television shows, which I'm sure we might touch on a little bit here tonight.
Oh yeah.
So I just in talking with you, just glossing over this for the listeners, but just in talking with you, we seem to share a lot of the same interests, and sometimes our opinions align. I can't really think, at least in person, where an opinion that you may have had or I have had has not really meshed very well. Hopefully we can stir up some controversy, some drama here.
I'm sure that point will come at some point.
But yeah, that's me. And I just remember, when it just kind of the conception of this podcast kind of came to a head. I can't remember the first time I brought it up, but it really came to a head when Comic-Con came around recently, and they, Warner Brothers got up and staged and dropped a bomb for all intents and purposes, which was the Superman Batman movie. Coming in,
and boy, was it a bomb.
Yeah, well, see, here's the thing, and obviously that was supposed to be some kind of segue into talking about this. Is there any kind of like real confirmation here? Is it Superman Batman? Is it Batman Superman? Is it Man of Steel 2? I mean, is there...
I really don't know, because they never really got too in depth. I mean, they said that they wanted to do a Batman Superman movie. I mean, technically you could say it's Man of Steel 2, but it really isn't if you're, kind of boiling it down that way.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, when they got up on stage, obviously,
I believe they referenced it as like a Batman Superman movie.
Okay, because like some reports say Man of Steel 2 is going to have Batman in it. It's and other things say it's the Batman Superman. And then other people are like, it's world's finest. So I was just wondering if they've actually nailed down like a technical thing for it. I guess we could talk about what we do know, which is Zack Snyder's directing. How do you feel about
that? I think that for DC or for Warner Brothers, I think that that's very capable hands. I mean, considering that Chris Nolan isn't going to be doing it. I mean, he's executive producer and he's kind of in the background, kind of helping along. But I think Zack Snyder did a really good job with Man of Steel, despite everyone's pissing and moaning over Superman doing what he did to Zod at the end.
Well, I
mean, they kind of made it more real. It was not really out of character for him, considering it was a choice of innocent life or this tyrant.
Well, I guess, and this is not I did not come up with this myself. I watched the movie. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I cringed for a moment when the end happened. And then in my mind, I was like, well, you know what? It really depends on how he deals with this. How he deals with the actions that he chose. And we're not going to get to see that because the action he made is the climax of the movie, and so we're not going to get another 2 hours of him, dealing with the choice that he made. So really for me, I kind of watched it under the bridge. Is okay. I have to see how they handle it in Man of Steel 2. If they don't show him at least, having some kind of issue with it, I might take issue with it. But something in my head still lingered at the time, and I watched a video review by a guy named Movie Bob for Escapist Mag, and he actually brought up a really interesting point, and that is the actions that he chose. That okay, you know what? We need to spoil this, so spoilers here. For I don't know, probably 30 seconds. If him going and killing Zod at the end of that movie shows that he is a character that is willing to cross that line, and that instantly puts into question any other villain that you put him up against, because it's kind of like, oh, if something gets too tough, why doesn't he just kill this guy? And I kind of agreed with that. I agreed with what he was saying because it kind of resonated with the way that I was feeling. And because it instantly makes a guy like Lex Luthor, who's just a normal human, who's always picking on Superman, always getting in his business, you got to imagine it gets pretty annoying after a while.
It's almost like he could take care of him with a flick of his wrist and not give a second thought to it.
Exactly.
So they've kind of already in themselves damaged the future of the DC universe just because he
took the easy way out.
Yeah, I mean, they could have banished him to the Phantom Zone again. I mean, it would have been something to leave him kind of out in the open, for possible later, even though they probably wouldn't go back to him, but it wouldn't be him taking that kind of low road, getting down to their level.
Right. And like I said, I think it goes back to how do they deal with it in the next movie. And I think a lot of Superman, or a lot of Man of Steel, to me reminded me of Batman Begins. He wasn't Superman. There were a lot of things, like a lot of people out there saying that's not how Superman is, that's not how Superman acts. Superman didn't come out, in my mind, in my idea of Superman is he did not come out of the gate as Superman. He has the moral code from living in Kansas and stuff like that, and he has the wisdom of his fathers and stuff like that. But it's like he has to figure out how to use that stuff on his own. So people were like, he endangered a lot of people by having the fight in the city, and he wasn't protecting anybody. Well, he's never protected anybody. In the movie, all they show him doing is saving people. So in my mind, that's another way for him to grow, is also being a protector. So while this was Man of Steel and he was supposed to be Superman, he wasn't Superman. It's kind of like watching Batman Begins. He's not Batman yet. He doesn't just open, and I mean, he's Batman at the end of the movie.
But it's not just boom, here we go.
Exactly. And
it seems like he learned it almost too instantaneously, and there was no real learning of it or build up. I mean, yeah, they explained a few things, just having him, showing him learning a few things, but it seemed like it was an all of a sudden thing.
Yeah, and at least in Man of Steel, it's like in the next one they can show him, when he gets in a fight or something like that, they can show him being aware of his surroundings, being aware of the lives that are at stake, and moving the fight out of Main Street, moving the fight out of downtown Metropolis, stuff like that. And it's just like that's my argument for the people that are saying it's not Superman. Well, I don't think he was Superman. I don't think he was Superman until the very end. When he threw the drone, in front of the car and then flew away. I think that was Superman. And then he was Superman when he was in the interrogation room. But,
and then that almost seemed like a Batman, The Dark Knight scene, which everybody had fun photoshopping.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I didn't see any of those.
They photoshopped in place of Lois Lane, Batman from The Dark Knight.
Oh, cool.
Directly across from him at the table.
So, the other thing we know about the Batman Superman movie is that they're going to reference Dark Knight Returns as their guideline. How do you feel about that?
I could see that because I like the fact that they're going towards Frank Miller for collaborative help, being that he knows how to pit those two against each other really well. I like the fact that they're going for a comic writer who understands the two of them and their kind of odd dynamic. I could see that because I mean it shows that they're friends, but you know, due to their own moral compasses and where they lie in that range, it shows what one is willing to do, whereas the other one is not, and kind of you get to see the ultimate test of battle of the wills. And the only thing I don't quite agree with having the whole Batman Superman versus instead of a Batman and Superman movie, like where they're kind of I mean, I'm not really fond of the idea of the versus thing. I mean, yeah, you can do that, but I have a feeling it'll end up being like the Freddy versus Jason or the, you know, Alien versus Predator. It's going to be a joke.
Right.
Whereas if they had like a common goal that, you know, the two of them meet somewhere, you know, and then have to learn how to work with each other through most of the film, both combating the same villain.
So
I could see that working out, but I can't see doing a versus film because I think it's going to be turned into a joke.
So in your opinion, you'd rather see the world's finest than The Dark Knight Returns?
Yeah, I'd rather see that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would like to see that, but at the same time, I wish that I would like to see. I think here's one of the unconfirmed things: is no one knows who's playing Batman.
Oh, he does.
I want it to be Christian Bale.
I sincerely, I could see him playing it for another 3 films, or however many that they can get him to sign on for, because he did a good job. The only thing I didn't like with his portrayal of Batman was where he talked like this.
Yeah,
instead of just going from a casual voice to a slightly deeper voice or something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the voice, but at the same time, it doesn't detract from the movies for me.
No, it doesn't take away from his portrayal of Batman, who was clearly a badass.
So, but one of the things they didn't show is the detective side of Batman. They didn't show. I mean, they show that he has some sleuthing ability and he has some concept of deduction, rules of deduction and stuff like that. But they didn't show a guy that is on par with Sherlock Holmes.
No, they showed a guy who went to people for tech to just pound people.
Right.
They didn't actually have him. He's supposed to be like the only way that he actually truly falls in, and I guess this kind of leads to their eventual Justice League that they're planning on doing. You have Superman that's, basically the god of the group. You have Wonder Woman that's the other kind of, god of the group. You have Green Lantern, who's a simple human with a power ring. You have Flash, who's, a man with
super speed and a mouth.
Super speed, yeah, and a mouth. You have, whether they choose to use Aquaman or John Jones, Martian Manhunter, whichever one they choose to use. I mean, each one of those has abilities. Batman is just a simple man, but he has the greatest strategic mind in all the world. Like, he's 2 steps ahead of Lex Luthor, and he's like 1,000 steps ahead of everyone else, to the point that he has a contingency plan for everyone in the Justice League. But that's, I mean, I definitely feel that the Nolan verse, and for that matter, a lot of the actual Batman films don't even capture that in the slightest. It's more of a, I use my tech and I beat him up and that's it. Whereas you get to Batman the Animated Series, or even this new Beware the Batman cartoon, and they take it back to his detective side. I mean, yeah, there's some gadgets and there's some beat 'em ups, but it's mostly strategy,
Right.
which is, I think, what made what made the original show endure so much and become such a fan favorite, and what I think is going to make this new show just as good.
Well, I think here's what I would like to see happen. I would like Christian Bale to come back. I would like Christopher Nolan to ask him to come back, and Christian to put the suit on again. I think Christian Bale should be the Robert Downey Jr. of the DC universe.
That would make sense, honestly, because he's already played the part.
And
You know, I mean, even if they wanted to tie it into the Dark Knight trilogy, not saying that they should, but
I think
even if they can, he's still alive.
right. Well, here's a funny thing aside. If the world of Man of Steel and the Nolanverse, like if the Snyderverse and the Nolanverse end up existing in the same continuity, the end of Dark Knight Rises makes a lot more sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would.
Because Superman saved him.
That would be hilarious, honestly.
But
But that would also explain why there's no Batman around and why he would come out of retirement. If they chose to do that.
And a lot of people, they made the joke of, if Superman existed in this world, the whole Bane thing would go away. And for me, I looked at that like they kind of showed in Man of Steel. He was only aware of what he was doing. He wasn't paying attention to the world at large. You know what I'm saying? Like he saved lives where he was. He didn't go out of his way to be a hero.
Because it just kind of was thrust upon him.
Yeah, well, because in the beginning of Man of Steel, he was trying to find out who he was. And I just imagine all the stuff in Gotham taking place at the, at about the same time he's finding out who he was. Like, why would he just venture into Gotham where there's a terrorist running loose? I mean, yeah, sure, you could stop him, but that's not him. That's not who he is yet. So that's my rationale for Superman not being there, using Snyder's Man of Steel. That is my rationale for Superman not being around in The Dark Knight Rises. However, I would like Christian Bale to be the Robert Downey Jr. Just have him come on, have him play Batman in the Batman Superman movie, and then just have him come. He doesn't have to do any more standalone movies. Just have him put the suit on for the Justice League movies.
That would make, honestly, a lot more sense than just having him as a solo piece.
Right. And then show him as being post Dark Knight Rises, show him being the smarter, the more calculating, the brain, the strategic general of the group. And I think that I was honestly kind of bummed that I'm going to sound kind of insensitive here, but I'm kind of bummed more now than I was when it happened, but I'm really bummed that he killed himself. Because both the World's Finest that I'm familiar with and The Dark Knight Returns rely on the Joker. To a certain extent. And for example, for Dark Knight Returns, basically, for anyone that hasn't read the comic, and it's been a few years since I've read it, but my understanding is what happens in The Dark Knight Returns is Joker is dying of an illness. Is that
no? I actually just read this year, so it's kind of fresh in my head. The thing is with Batman coming out of retirement, the Joker's in the nut house and they're getting ready to release him because he's fully reformed.
Oh, okay.
But he sees the report of Batman and a smile kind of hits his face, and because he's basically, everything's boring, nothing's fun because Batman's not around to be his royal pain in the ass.
Okay.
So he says Batman, and then so they get him on a talk show, and then he slaughters everyone, gets away, and then kind of continues on his mission to antagonize Batman.
Oh, that's kind of a bummer.
But he turns it into a battle of the death.
Well, yeah. I mean, for some reason in my head, the story went like this. For some reason in my head, I remember it as the Joker was dying of something, kind of lame for the Joker, and he was like, "I'm not going to die from this. I'm going to force Batman to kill me." And he goes out and starts inciting all these riots, or just starts, mass mayhem as the Joker is wont to do. And then the Batman's followers, they rise up because Batman's not there. They rise up to, try to quell the Joker's mayhem and his henchmen. And Batman comes out of retirement to do this, but at the same time, the government's like, okay, there's a lot of crap going on in Gotham City, martial law. We're going to send in Superman to put a stop to this whole thing once and for all. For some reason, that's how the whole thing plays out in my head. And then, Clark shows up, and then they have their big showdown, and, Batman in a power suit, and Superman having just, been affected by a nuclear blast. They square off, and Superman gets beat, and
and then you can't forget Green Arrow shoots him with a kryptonite arrow,
right? So
which causes Batman to pummel him
mercilessly.
Yes.
So, but and in World's Finest, he teams up with, the Joker teams up with Lex Luthor, and they kind of cross over. Lex goes after Batman, and Joker goes after Superman. It's just kind of a bummer that, Heath's not around anymore to fill that role.
Yeah, because in today's age, I kind of think it's difficult to find a good Joker.
Well,
or a good actor that can play that kind of role.
Now, I would never wish this on anybody. I would never wish this movie on anybody. I actually kind of enjoyed the movie right up until the very end. But the main villain, quote unquote, in The Purge was creepy.
That guy was eerily close to Heath Ledger.
Like, did you see The Purge?
Yes.
Yeah. Wasn't he great?
I thought this guy would make a perfect Joker, like after the Heath Ledger one.
I was just like, whoa. I mean,
he had that kind of twisted look to his face, and he kind of had the, sane but nuts.
And no makeup. He had the smile.
I know.
I was like, oh, what am I watching? I'm watching the next Joker right here. And on the flip side, though, that makes me go, okay, if we're gonna if they did a new Joker, you need a new Batman. And I'm sure you saw my tweet, about the guy from The Purge. I was just like, he could be a Joker disciple, or, God forbid, Nolan takes it and flips it completely on his head, and they make Harley Quinn a male. I don't know. I think he would be a great, not, if it was the Nolan verse, I don't think he'd be a great replacement. I think he'd be a great, disciple of Joker. But if they ended up recasting Batman, which I'm not, the lists I've seen for the Batman choices, not cutting it.
I've seen that top 10 list because Blanchard posted that as well, or reposted, I should say.
That's a travesty.
What's that?
That list is a travesty.
Oh, I know. It's so terrible. It's sick. They have all these mainstream guys from various mainstream TV shows that they're picking them because they're the favorites of those shows. They're not picking them for their ability necessarily, or even their look or style to possibly even play that role. Like, I can't imagine any of them playing Batman.
Right.
It's there. I mean, granted, there are a few that I saw on that list that I was like, based on appearance, I could say probably, but I don't know enough of their work to actually say anything. I mean, I'm so it's so up and down on the next Batman when they decide to go that route, just because I think everybody's got it set in their head that, Bale is Batman.
Well, the only other name I've seen that someone's mentioned and made me actually go, okay, I could see that, is Army Hammer from Social Network and the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, I could see him, honestly, I could see him playing Batman. I mean, he's got the height thing. He's got the kind of, you know, dweeby Bruce Wayne-ish kind of vibe to him on the outside. And then he's got the kind of appearance of, you know, with the mask on, he's got the appearance that he could be Batman.
Right.
So, I mean, I could, and I don't know too much of, I haven't seen Social Network, so I can't really comment.
Well, Social Network makes me think he could play Bruce Wayne to a T.
Because it's like almost a political, business-like approach. I'm just gauging it on what I know of the basics of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he plays twins in the movie, and they're both like rich assholes.
Oh, okay. So he could play Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I think he's got the physicality. I mean, good or bad, Lone Ranger, good or bad, I think he has the physicality to play, you know, Batman. And little tidbit for anyone that may not know, apparently he was the front runner to play Batman in the Justice League movie back in 2006 when he was 18, and he passed it.
And you know what? He's young enough.
So
I could really see that guy. I mean, you can't fault him for, you know, the Lone Ranger or anything, but
no. But his name clicked with me the same way that Christian Bale's name clicked with me. It was kind of like when Nolan was getting ready to do Batman, I was kind of like, I don't know who could play Batman. There's no one I can think of. And then they said that it was Christian Bale, and I was like, okay, well, American Psycho makes me think he can play Bruce Wayne, and Equilibrium makes me think he could play Batman. You know, and I was like, I'm sold. And then we got the Dark Knight trilogy, so that worked out okay. But I got that same like itch when someone mentioned Army Hammer as Batman. I was like, I've
actually seen a couple of these lists floating around, and I think his name is one of the few consistencies on them. So. You know, and like you said, he was mentioned before to play him. So I definitely would like to see this guy get a shot at it, because I think he could do a good job at it. Especially with Snyder and Nolan behind it.
Right.
I think they could give him the direction that he needs to play it properly. But I've also heard other names floating around on this too, like the guy that played Superman and the Superman Returns, and which I couldn't see him playing it.
No.
Carl Urban, he's forever to me going to be McCoy and Judge Dredd.
Yeah, he was a good Dredd.
And he was a good McCoy.
Yes.
I mean, those. But other than the rest of that, that list, I can't really endorse any of the other ones. I've also heard Jensen Ackles, is a rumor too. But
no, I'm sorry.
I could see him playing like a hard ass Batman, but I couldn't see him playing Bruce Wayne.
I have a hard time seeing him with dark hair. He's usually like a blonde, or like kind of like a sounds kind of dumb, a darker blonde.
In Supernatural, he's got the brown hair.
I don't know, but it doesn't come across as like Batman dark. Like I don't know.
No, Batman's got black hair,
right? So
it's that jet black. So I mean, I could see him playing Batman
with a cowl on, not as Bruce Wayne.
No, I could not. I could definitely not see him playing Bruce Wayne. It would be the equivalent of, it's like Michael Keaton playing Batman. Michael Keaton was a good Batman, but a bad Bruce Wayne, whereas Val Kilmer was a better Bruce Wayne than Batman.
Right.
So, I mean, it's that instance right there. I could see that, but I wouldn't. I mean, I could see him doing like the vocals and playing the hard-ass Batman fairly well. But I think I would rather see Armie Hammer get it.
All right. I think in the spirit of what this podcast is supposed to be about, and you can stop me if I'm wrong here, I think we should take a spot for an ad spot, and then come back and talk about TV shows.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay, just so we can keep it mixing up. It feels like it was diving.
I think we've beaten the Superman Batman thing.
Yeah, well, I also felt like it was kind of diving into, we're getting onto a topic, and that's fine, but that's not what this is. So, yep, we'll be back on the other side of this spot.
The Pull Bag is the GCRN's place for everything you need in the comic book world. We focus on new and current comics, while also tackling a few back issues here and there. So join the entire GCRN crew and see what issues the hosts have with today's panels. You can find the Pull Bag on iTunes and geekcastradio.com. Make your great escape into comics.
And we're back after that nice commercial break there, which was fairly short compared to our other shows. So getting into the TV aspect of it, a lot of the shows I watch happen to be on break right now because it's summer.
I hate summer in television.
I so hate it for the most part, because it's so long between, the spring break ending of the shows and the fall returns. It kills me, because I was watching shows like Revolution, Last Man Standing, Supernatural. There were a few others I was watching. Oh yeah, Big Bang Theory. I love all those shows. Can't wait for them to return. But I don't know if you want to comment on any of those. But
I don't watch Big Bang Theory. My sister tried to get me to watch an episode, but it has a laugh track in it. I'm just going to say right now, 99% of the time, if I hear a laugh track in a comedy, I'm done. You've lost me. Regardless of how funny the writing may or may not be, I feel like putting on a laugh track is like telling me that something is supposed to be funny. And I think that your stuff should be genuinely funny versus you having to tell me that something is funny. I watch Revolution. Revolution is on what I call my train wreck list. I can't not watch it because I gotta know how bad it may or may not get. That said, I enjoyed, I think it was the last 3 or 4 episodes. I thought they were pretty solid. But coming out of Comic-Con, I guess everything's kind of getting flipped on its head for season 2, so I'm interested to see how that goes. And I know they stole one of the better writers of Supernatural for Revolution, so I'm interested to see how that affects both shows. Do watch Supernatural. My sister got me into that. I think myself, season 8, because we're going into season 10, right?
Season 9.
We're going into season 9. So season 7 was a mess.
Oh yeah, season 6 was getting there. Season 7 was terrible.
Yeah,
and it was such a cluster that I'm glad that senior writer got booted and they went back to Jeremy Carver, I believe it was.
Yeah.
From the first 3 seasons, which he not only managed to fix all the crap from season 7, but he's managed to start bringing up old things and tying up loose ends and then opening up another can of worms.
Yeah, I mean, 8 completely redeemed that show. I mean, I watched seasons 1 through 6, couldn't stop. It was like a must-watch thing, steamroll through it. 7 became a train wreck show. It's like, how bad can this possibly get? And then, 8 completely redeemed the series.
Yeah, season 7, we almost quit watching the show. And we only kept with it because we were like, I hope there's an episode where they somehow start getting back on track.
You hope there's an episode where it just undoes everything before.
Yeah, like the whole season's been retconned.
It was all a dream.
God woke up and decided to hit the rewind switch. That show, I'm glad that it's managed to turn around, and I'm waiting to see what they do with that. Revolution, I agree to the same extent that you do. It's kind of one of those shows where I am interested. I am interested to the point I will keep watching just to see what happens. But the show is kind of a mess.
The idea is better than the execution.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love the whole concept of the show. It's just I think they kind of hit the ground not knowing where they really wanted to go. So I'm hoping that the Supernatural writer that jumps in there can rein it back in.
Yeah. So I just felt like Given the amount of I can't talk. I've been talking for like the last 4 hours. Given the amount of post-apocalyptic content that's out there, TV, movies, games, I feel like the post-apocalyptic, and make no mistake about it, Revolution is post-apocalyptic. I feel like that show is too clean, and I feel like the main character who has the main character, the girl that grew up, Charlie, that grew up, in that era of no power, of lawlessness and all this. I feel like, they hold, and I understand, society is only as good as like the rules that it has, and you want to hold on to what you had, but I feel like she's so naive. It's so annoying.
It's almost like she's it's almost like she's to the extent that she's like Sam from Supernatural.
Yeah.
And you have the older guy from Twilight as Dean.
And you know what? I can't take that guy seriously because he's in Twilight.
I like him in the show, but every time I see his face, I think Twilight.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like his character, but I just have a hard time taking him seriously because, yeah, I'm seeing the dad from Twilight that's like the biggest pushover on the planet, and I'm like, and he's supposed to be this, yeah, this monster. I'm like, no, so I can't hold that. I don't really hold that against him. I'm not sure, what the real problem is, but the show is just too clean. Everyone is like always clean. There's no grit to the thing. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe some of that'll change with season 2. Maybe it can't because it's on, broadcast television. Maybe it has to look a certain way. It can't, it can't be, just as an example, it can't be as gritty as The Walking Dead because anybody can turn on the TV and watch it. Whereas Walking Dead is on cable TV and you have to have AMC to watch it.
That could be.
So,
one of the other shows I was watching was Once Upon a Time.
I like that show.
I really like it. I'm not going to be watching the Neverland spinoff.
The Wonderland one?
Yeah, the Wonderland. Yeah, whatever it was. I don't plan on watching the spinoff because it has nothing to do with the core characters.
Well, if it has the Mad Hatter in it, I'm sold because I like the actor they got for the Mad Hatter. I
could see that, but being that I have so many shows I watch currently, and I know that you pretty much burn through them. Being that my time is limited, as far as what I have time to watch, there's certain shows that I choose to watch, and I don't think I'd watch the Wonderland one until maybe it hits, the full season or mid-season of whatever that's going to be.
Right.
And then play catch up, but I'm only going to keep up with the main story.
Right. Save it for now. Save it for the summer.
Yeah. Save it for a time when there's nothing on.
Exactly.
Like right now, we're watching on Netflix Continuum.
That's a good show.
Which the only reason it intrigued me was because of the futuristic thing and because of Rachel Nichols. Just to be honest there.
I don't know. I started watching because just the idea sounded, you put time travel on anything, I'll take a crack at it. I like that kind of stuff because I like seeing how they can play with it, and some of the ways they play with it in Continuum are interesting, like dealing with family, and like the timeline and the continuity and stuff like that. I know you're still in season 1 and I'm not spoiling anything, but season 2, like their impact that they have like in the present day, you get to see kind of more of how it's
affecting the future.
Yes. And I feel like season 1 has this cheap, low budget camera effect. I think it's called tilt shift, where everything that they don't want you to see is all fuzzy and blurred out.
Mm-hmm.
That is gone in season 2.
Oh, nice.
And the effects, especially when they go and show you future scenes, the effects are a lot better. So it's a lot easier to actually, you're not jarred out of like crappy CGI or like, Vaseline all over the camera lens. And yeah, there's more of a link. You get to see, kind of, they get to see time as a loop. It's actually a theory that is brought up in season 1. You get to see that it's actually one of the theories that Adler brings up is actually the theory that they're kind of using for the show. But I don't want to spoil anything for you. I don't want to spoil anything for people that haven't seen it. But I'm enjoying it. I got the wife into it, so I watched all of season 1 in a day because I work 15 hours, and then
Nice.
I grabbed season 2 and I watched all of that in a day. Except there are 13 episodes in season 2.
Instead of 10.
Yeah, instead of 10. So I just watched episode 11 today, and so I still have 12 and 13, and it's good. I think you'll like where it goes.
That'll be interesting to see how that continues to play out, and I'm happy to hear that it's going on for a 3rd season. So
that makes me happy too. And I'm also a big fan of the shorter seasons.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I like when they hit 13 episodes and then they go to another season, whereas when they get like 18 to 20 episodes or to 22 episodes, sometimes more,
Yep.
Per season, I find it to be really annoying because it seems like they're just dragging it out until the last episode of the season to explain what they could have done in half the time.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that kind of turned me on to the BBC shows like Doctor Who and Sherlock and some other things, and they don't do the filler episodes. You almost always get story because they've only got they've got 10-12 episodes to tell a season, and so they don't get 10 more episodes of garbage. And I wish FX does that. A lot of their shows only end up being 12 to 13 episodes. Sci-Fi did that with Eureka for a couple of seasons, and Alphas, and Warehouse 13, which is another show I think you might like.
I could see a lot of shows and a lot of production studios spending a lot less money if they would get rid of the filler episodes and just do the story.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking, kind of a segue, we were talking today about how are there going to be any surprises in Arrow season 2?
I was about to bring that up too.
Well, it's kind of like I was thinking, what if they just they made 12 episodes of Arrow and 12 episodes of Flash. You know what I'm saying? Like they use the budget of one show to do 2 shows.
And then they could air one while the other's off.
Yeah. You could have continuity, different I don't know.
Well, actually there's an update as of like yesterday that they're going to make Barry Allen the Flash.
Okay.
And he will start as a recurring character on Arrow in the 2nd season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. They want to spin him off. The idea is to spin him off into his own series. But I was kind of like, you don't need 2 superheroes. I mean, okay, you can have.
Well, I mean, they're already going to have, what is it, Huntress or is it? No, Black Canary is who they're going to introduce in the 2nd season too.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is you can have as many superhero shows as you want, right? But I don't think all of them need to be 22 episodes. Because you just end up with a bunch of garbage or stuff that just doesn't need to be there. But that aside, Steve, how do you feel about Arrow?
I like it. I like the concept, and I like the fact that he's as close to a Batman on TV as we're going to ever get. Because let's face it, Batman and Superman are at this point just film franchises. They aren't. I mean, I know they did 10 seasons of Smallville on CW, which again, CW is an entirely different subject for another day, but just because they tend to drag stuff on longer than what it needs to. Point being supernatural.
Well, okay. Is Supernatural getting thrown under the bus because of one season, or do you really think it's gone on too long?
It's because I feel like there's a lot of leftover plot devices from previous seasons that just kind of go by the wayside all of a sudden.
Okay.
And then it seems like they never fully finish off a timeline. Like you have this kid that's got like godlike abilities who all of a sudden disappears, and then you never hear anything more about the kid. You have the prophet who is writing the supernatural books, who all of a sudden disappears at one point, and you never hear from him again.
I assumed he died.
Well, the way they set it up, though, they made it look like he was going to be God.
Oh, okay.
In one of the episodes, just before he disappeared. So, I mean, there's a lot of loose ends left in there that they probably will never address, and I know that they're going to bring back Bobby Singer into the season 9. I don't know for a fact, but it's like my speculation on it because of what happened with the whole aftermath of the last episode.
Right.
They're going to find a way to bring back some past characters into this to hopefully round it out through season 10. I don't really see it going past season 10.
Right.
I'd like to see them end it on a high note rather than dragging it down another rat hole. But CW seems to be the one that brings stuff 10 seasons and then, finally lets it go. I just hope they don't do that with Arrow. I like the show again, like I said, but I feel like there's too many points where they're spending longer than what they need to explain certain things that could be done in half the time. They could cut out a lot of BS in the show and get more into the character rather than having all this random filler. I mean, I know they're trying to introduce other characters and everything, and that's great, but I would rather see them do it right and do it quick rather than waste a bunch of time on it.
Yeah,
I think at this day and age, I think people are kind of bored with the dragon stuff on. I mean, that's why 24 is coming back, but going to be half the amount of episodes that it was before.
Call it 24 then. If it's
they're going to call it 24,
hours.
But it's going to cover 12 hours instead of 24. Which it's strange, but they're gonna that's what they're gonna do with it when they bring it back. But I think 12 to 13 episode seasons, I think, are plenty sufficient at this point in time, and with people's attention spans drawn to so many other things, it's not really worth expanding on that.
Yeah, I get, and I feel like with Arrow, there's at least something in every episode that makes me roll my eyes. And I feel like, especially early on, I feel like they go out of their way to make him look cool when they don't need to. Like, case in point, I think it's the first time Deadshot is in the show. It's like one of the first 3 episodes, I think. He's going to find where a bullet was fired from. And he's kind of doing his detective thing or whatever. And he's walking down this alleyway and he looks up and he's like, oh, I have to get to the top of this building. And he ends up climbing up the side of the building like parkour style, just like going from window ledge to window ledge. And in the camera shot right next to him is the ladder. And I was like, okay, why are you jumping all over the side of the building when there's a ladder right there? It's just, there's like little things like that in the show. And I'm assuming you've finished season 1?
Most of it.
Okay.
Because I kind of lost interest towards the end just because I got tired of just the filler kind of feeling.
Okay, well, like Revolution, it gets better towards the end.
Good to know.
However, there is a character in Arrow, and for the life of me I cannot remember his name, but he is also in The Dark Knight. The same actor is in The Dark Knight, and he's playing 2 different characters, but the role of the character is the same in The Dark Knight as it is in Arrow. And I was kind of like, wait a minute, how does this happen? How does, Warner Brothers, who owns CW, who owns Arrow, who owns, that, like, how could you not do? And the character's role in Arrow is, I mean, he's not like a reoccurring character. I think he's like only in like 3 or 4 episodes, maybe 5 tops. But it's kind of like, why would you not make him the same guy?
I think they weren't allowed to, though.
But I'm just like, but how can you not be allowed to? It's your own stuff. I mean, yeah, okay, you can say Christopher Nolan told me no. Okay, fine, I guess that makes sense to me. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it'd be such a small Easter egg that maybe not. I don't even think that many people would notice. In fact, I don't even know that many people remember the guy's name from The Dark Knight. I don't. I just know it's the same actor playing the same role. So I was kind of bummed. I was like, oh, man, you guys missed the perfect opportunity.
Well, it's like they're throwing a fit because they won't be able to use. They're wanting to use Green Lantern, and they wanted to use Nightwing, and they wanted to in Arrow, almost turning it into like when Smallville went and got the Justice Society.
Right.
So I mean, I think it's kind of unneeded. But again, if they wanted to go that route, they should have just made a Justice League TV show rather than Arrow. And
I think they wanted to, kind of like they wanted to do the Aquaman thing. I think they actually did. There's a Justice League episode of Smallville that I don't think wasn't as well received as the network was hoping, which is why the Justice League.
To be fair, they didn't have any of the big characters in there. They didn't have Flash. They didn't have Batman. They didn't have Wonder Woman. They didn't have Martian Manhunter. I mean, you could even do it without him and do Cyborg or somebody. But I mean, they didn't have any of the big characters. They didn't have Green Lantern. I mean, they had. Yeah, they had, okay. I think they had Arrow in there. I think they had Hawkman and.
Okay, you could do the Justice League B team.
But people go for the A team primarily.
Right, but apparently people are fine with Green Arrow. I mean, he's not an A-lister by any.
Oh no.
So, let's see. Are there any TV shows? I thought of a question that we could use for to kind of go out on to see if we can get people to listen and get some opinions. But is there a TV show that you think people should watch that they haven't watched? Like, it doesn't even have to be on. It can be on Netflix, or it can be not on any streaming service. It could be something they have to go out and rent at a video store. Oh my god! Or they might have to like buy it.
They still have video stores?
Yeah, I have a Family Video down the street.
I know there's not very many left.
But is there a TV show that you think should be watched? It doesn't even. It could be anything.
Huh.
Like, maybe you don't think it has, the following that it should, or you think, just, I don't know. Or what's your favorite TV show? I mean, I think I might know what it is, but.
Well, is it cartoon or TV show?
Any TV show. Like, what is someone says, what's your favorite TV show? What's the first thing that pops into your mind?
See, for me, a lot of those change from time to time, but I would have to argue that one of the things I really like to watch quite often, and these are two different shows, but they rank about the same for me, so they're always kind of hard, and it kind of depends on the week. But I like the Batman the Animated Series and Beast Wars cartoon. I mean, those are two of the two. I mean, you can't rent either one of them, but and funny enough, you can only stream one of them on Netflix. You can't stream Batman the Animated Series or Superman the Animated Series. They just have the Justice League and Unlimited and Bat Beyond. But I think that, I mean, that Batman cartoon is what kind of revolutionized. I mean, after Tim Burton did the film, I think that kind of changed the Batman animated look.
Totally.
And it also gave, for the next 20 years, the voice of the Joker, and actually longer than that for Batman himself, give or take a couple different iterations. But he was even in Flashpoint as Bruce Wayne Batman. And that would be Kevin Conroy, which he spilled the beans on that before I'm sure he was supposed to when we interviewed him last year. But yeah, I would say that and Beast Wars. I really like that take on the Transformers saga, although Transformers Prime is kind of a close second as far as Transformers cartoons are concerned, just because they actually had really good writing and CG and character portrayals and voice acting and everything else.
Yeah, I enjoyed Prime.
I'm happy with where it's going, and can't wait for the animated film that comes out shortly for that. But one of the shows I really, really like that's on TV again and has just returned to television as of 3 weeks ago, or I believe it was 3 weeks ago. No, it was 2 weeks ago. Is Whose Line Is It Anyway? I was a fan of the British version. I was a fan of the American ABC version, despite the fact that it was kind of unnecessarily clean because it was on ABC Family.
Okay.
Whereas the CW has more or less upgraded the production value on some of it, because they can do some other skits that were on the interim show that was Improvaganza.
Okay.
And the green screen show. Those were two of Drew Carey's after Whose Line Is It Anyway American version died down in 2004. They took a lot of the newer skits, like the laying on the floor green screen, or the rewind, or forward skits, and they merged them into Whose Line. And I like the fact that you have Ryan Stiles, Colin Mockery, and Wayne Brady back on the show. I like the new CW version. My only pet peeve is it seems like the first 5 episodes, not only are they constantly introducing guests from random television shows and almost kind of wasting the time that they have those people on there instead of doing another skit. But I also feel like they're doing some of the same skits over and over instead of doing some of the other plethora of ones that they have available to them. I think that most of that's just them playing it safe for the moment, but I mean, I'm waiting for some of those older things to come back out, and they're starting to reintroduce some of the old fourth seater cast members. But I really enjoy that show, even though having seen 8 seasons of the American version and multiple seasons of the British one, I pretty much know who's going to do what in what skit, of who they make do what role in the skits, and how a lot of it's going to play out, just because I'm so familiar with the content.
Right.
But I still find it hilarious, especially now that they can actually swear on the show and they don't edit it out. Like, I mean, they bleep them if they say, drop the F-bomb, but like they can say son of a bitch, and it just, they leave it in there, or they can give somebody the finger. And I mean, it's just, it's all raw. It's not super edited like ABC did.
Nice.
So I see that they can actually kind of more, like Colin on one of the recent ones did like a, getting, effed up the ass joke, and it got in the show. That would have never flew on the ABC. What they would have been like, reshoot. So, I mean, I really like the show, and I'm glad it's back. That's pretty much all I'm watching at the moment.
I did not like Whose Line Is It Anyways when it aired. I just never sought it out, so I'm not It's just not my thing. I mean, I don't even want to say it's not my thing because I enjoy it when I watch it, but I don't go out of my way to watch it.
So if it's on and you're flipping channels, you'll watch it, and if there's nothing else,
yeah, pretty much.
I could see that.
I've got 2 shows that I think are worth people's time. They're my 2 most favorite shows. And then I've got a question, and then if you want, you can close this out. But when people ask me what my favorite TV shows are, the first one that pops into my mind is, it's not all that geeky, but it's where a lot of up and coming people are coming from now, is Friday Night Lights.
Okay.
I like that show a lot. It's not all about football. It's actually more about life, just in general. And I like the way that the show was shot. It's produced by Peter Berg, who did Battleship, who people seem to despise. I actually like the movie, and he's done some other movies. He also directed the movie Friday Night Lights, which is not tied to this. Maybe thematically it's tied to this, but it's not a continuation of the movie. I like the heart that's in the show. People like Adrian, I think it's Adrian Padalecki, who was on Supernatural.
And she was cast as Wonder Woman temporarily.
Yep, she was cast as Wonder Woman. She was just in Justice. She was just in G.I. Joe. That's kind of the first place I saw her, was Friday Night Lights. Although had I been watching Supernatural, I might have seen her there first. I also Taylor Kitsch, who played Gambit in X-Men Origins. I liked his portrayal of Gambit, hated the movie. He was also John Carter, and he was also in Battleship. I like that actor quite a bit. Sometimes I think he's miscast, but that's not something that he can control. So I think it's really great. A lot of the scenes were improvised. The writers, my wife is home. That was my dog running to see her. A lot of the scenes in the show are kind of improvised. The directors say, like, this is the discussion that you're having with your husband. You guys are in an argument. And what they do is they would have 3 cameramen with, like, handy cams, like, set up in the house. And they would all film the scene the way they think it should be shot. And when they were going through back and editing the show together, they would take whichever cameraman had gotten the most dramatic angle, or whichever angle they thought best fit the scene. And as a result, it brings this kind of like home movie documentary style vibe to it, but it's not like a mockumentary or anything like that. It's just kind of like gritty. It's like you're there with those people. And I think anyone that actually mildly enjoyed high school would like the show. Another one, a little more geeky, a little more kind of on topic with what we've been talking about. Favorite show would be Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love that show with a passion. It aired for 3 seasons, and they were all like 20, 22 episode seasons with hardly any filler. If your only experience is with the horrible M. Night Shyamalan movie, you are doing yourself a disservice by not watching The Last Airbender. The animation is amazing. The humor is funny. The writing is great. And the story, from beginning to end, they knew exactly what they wanted to do, and they divided their story up over 3 seasons. And they told their story from beginning to end, and it's amazing. And just last year, I think it was like probably 2 or 3 years after the show had been off the air, the creators wanted to do a follow-up called Legend of Korra, and it's set 70 years later. And that is amazing. For a show that's been off the air for 4 years to come back as like a brand new series with a new cast of characters and, you know, a slightly revamped, higher budget animation style and still be quality, that's a feat. You don't really see that too often. I don't really think I've ever seen that. I mean, yeah, the DC animated stuff has a continuity thread to it and a similar art style, but it's not. I guess the closest thing to it would be the DC animated universe. But those are two things I think people should watch. My question to anyone that may listen to this, and it's a question that I've been asking myself and my coworkers have been having this discussion, is a lot of talk about Justice League movie. We talked about it a little bit here earlier. Who would you cast as Wonder Woman? I think we should just save this to maybe talk about next time.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Because I can't even think of anyone. There isn't a name that even jumps. I mean, I can think of people, but there isn't like one that I could take seriously.
Yeah, it seems like it's an almost difficult. I think it's one of the more difficult out of the Justice League characters to get right.
In my opinion, I think it's going to be like a Bale or a Hammer kind of epiphany where someone's just going to say it and I'm going to see it. But like just like the list of possible Batman follow-ups to Bale, like I'm not seeing it, you know, like
the only one I could see doing that is Army Hammer, but that's unless like you said, somebody happens to mention a name and show it and kind of say, you know, and then get that idea of, oh yeah, that would work.
Exactly.
Wonder Woman, we've seen enough people, you know, whether it's in Smallville or random shows or you know, the test pilot, I mean, showing different iterations of Wonder Woman, it's still, you're going to piss somebody off no matter what you do with that character if you're trying to modernize it too much.
So yeah, I mean, if you listen to it and you get to this point in the podcast, let us know. Who do you, and we'll talk about it. We'll debate your choices. Maybe.
Shoot. That, and I'm going to one up that too. And if you get past that point of figuring out who should be Wonder Woman, what do you think they should do with Green Lantern? I know Blanchard on the regular GCR stuff absolutely hates Ryan Reynolds. To which I told him that, you know, Ryan Reynolds is not the true reason behind that film sucking. It was just a bad villain in bad writing.
Yes.
I think he did well with what he had. Granted, I think he would make a better Flash than Green Lantern, but totally. I think that they did well with what they had in that film. But if you had a choice, what Green Lantern version would you do, and who would you cast as that Green Lantern? Whether it's Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, those are pretty much the only two that really fly with the Justice League. So I'll just stick with those two. Which one would you choose, and what name would you associate with that character?
Good one.
I know that's going to get all kinds of people saying one way or the other.
All right.
But yeah, I think that about rounds out this episode. So rather than getting any more in depth on anything else, we'll just save it for the next time. You can get a hold of us on Twitter at Geekcast Radio. You can contact us via email with feedback at geekcastradio.com. You can call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. And please remember to leave your message and your name so we know how to address you. My Twitter is at SCP21 and yours is?
At Booth Ninja 81.
So I guess for this episode of Altered Geek Unplugged, we will close it out and see you guys the next time.
Bye.